And on today's episode of High Events, we're here at Amari Golf for the Authors BBQ dinner, where we get the chance to meet, greet, and also dine with all the writers from Fairway Golf Literary Festival 2017. And there's a lot happening. Everyone is so happy to meet each other and just have a good time. So let's go see what's happening. Ashok Ferry this evening. How are you doing?
Oh, very well. Rather too well, in fact. I'm really enjoying myself.
That's good. And what did you think about this year's Fairway Golf Literary Festival?
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It was very broad-based, so we had all sorts of stuff. Performance poetry, cookery, poetry. I mean, the works.
And how was the atmosphere this year?
Very nice. Of course, the atmosphere is always nice at the golf festival because it's all kind of like-minded people who come. So I think because we're all away from Colombo, we can let our hair down. Those of us who have hair, that is. But it's a fantastic atmosphere.
So do you know any plans for the future with Fairway Golf Literary Festival?
Oh gosh, I hope I'll be asked back. That's all. That's all one can hope for as a writer.
I've got Malcolm with me. How are you doing this evening?
I'm very happy. This is my first visit to Sri Lanka, and I found it overwhelmingly beautiful. It's just a delightful place, so I'm very happy to be here.
All right, so can you tell us a bit about your book?
So I've come here mainly because of a book I wrote called Mariner, A Voyage with Samuel Taylor Coleridge, which is about the great English poet Coleridge and his most famous poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And it's about how, although he was a very young man when he wrote the poem, he was only 25, this magical and mysterious story of a voyage out and round the world and back. In a way, after writing the poem as a young man, he lived it out in his life. The disasters and the agonies of the mariner and his eventual return home all became events later in Coleridge's life. So I use his poem to tell his story, and I'm trying to revive Coleridge as a spiritual writer, as somebody who has something to say to us today, and especially about ecology. In the poem, the mariner kills an albatross wrongly and randomly, and later on he comes to realize we are all together woven in one web of life. And he says, "He prayeth best who loveth best all things, both great and small." So it actually is although it was written at the end of the 18th century, I think it is an ecological parable for us now.
I've got Marie with me. How are you doing this evening?
Okay, thank you.
All right, so can you tell us a bit about your photography exhibition that you've got?
Yes, well, it's a set of black and white silver halide photography that I paint. So it's black and white and I paint on it. So it's both photography and painting.
Okay, so you do this all by yourself?
Yes, everything by myself, and it's bloom. It's about blooming trees with flowers and or fruits.
Okay.
So it's and mainly Sri Lankan trees.
All right, and what do you think about the atmosphere at the Fairway Golf Literary Festival?
It's very nice. Yeah, very nice people, and I liked it.
Would you come for another exhibition?
Of course, yeah.
I've got Nisid with me right now. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you very much.
Tell us about your book. You told me that this is your first time at the Fairway Golf Literary Festival.
It is. I wrote a book about the partition of India in Pakistan in 1947, a non-fiction narrative. It came out a couple years ago, won a couple awards, and I'm very happy to come here and speak about it.
So what do you think about the Fairway Golf Literary Festival, especially because it's your first time here?
It's fantastic. I love Sri Lanka. I love the excuse to come back here. And I love these smaller festivals because you're able to spend more time with the authors, spend more time with the readers. It's a little more intimate. And the setting is incredible, so you can't beat that.
And how do you like the dinner that we're at, the Authors BBQ dinner?
Oh, it's lovely. It's great. It's a good chance for authors. You know, the best thing about writing a book is coming to these sorts of events where you can meet other writers, learn from them, and an event like this allows you to spend time with them, which is wonderful.
Right, so I hope that you'll be back for another Fairway Golf Literary Festival.
If they'll have me, I'll be back anytime.
We're here at the Authors BBQ dinner, and with me I've got Justine. How are you doing this evening?
Very good, thank you very much.
So tell us a bit about your book.
So my name's Justine Picardy, and I'm the editor of Harper's Bazaar, and I have written a biography of Coco Chanel, which is called Coco Chanel, The Legend and the Life, and it's about the greatest fashion designer really of all time, but also a woman who changed the way women thought about themselves by changing the way women dressed, by introducing trousers, cutting hair, taking away corsets, designing clothes that women could run in, work in, ride a bicycle in. She made women independent.
Is there any new material that we can expect in the coming future?
Well, I'm working on another book, but that's not finished yet. But a new edition of my Chanel book has just been published with new material and a lot of very interesting new images.
And what are your thoughts on the Fairway Gaul Literary Festival?
Oh, I love the Fairway Gaul Literary Festival. I've spoken at literary festivals around the world, really from, Russia to America, China, France, all around the UK. But this is a really magical one, and it's been a real privilege to be here. I feel very lucky to be here.
I'm here with Shiromi. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
So can you tell us a bit about your preview?
Okay, well, I came to the Gaul Literary Festival to preview my next novel. It is based on and inspired by the life and work of Minette de Silva, who many people don't really know this, but she is Sri Lanka's first modernist architect. She came before Geoffrey Bawa, and it's sort of a tribute to her, and I want the world to know her, for her to be better known. Yeah, so
when is your book coming out?
It's coming out next year. It should be, all going well, it should be out in February 2019. So look out for it. It's called Plastic Emotions.
All right, so how do you like the Fairway Gaul Literary Festival?
So it's been fantastic. This is my first time here. So I've never been to the festival. I've been to Sri Lanka many times. And I just think they treat people really well here. And I've met some fantastic authors and artists and architects, which has been really, really helpful for my work. So I'm going to be doing a little bit more editing, having met some of your wonderful, wonderful architects here as well, who knew Minette. Yeah.
I've got Catherine with me. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So can you tell us about your book, The Fish Ladder?
Well, The Fish Ladder is a travelogue that combines memoir with nature writing. So it's 3 different forms that somehow plait away to form one story. So I had this idea to follow a river from the sea to the source with my daughter, who was 9 years old at the time. It was in Scotland, and so it began as a physical journey following the river, but it became a meditation on origins, a meditation on who we are and where we come from, on the idea of the source, what the source is, and of turning back against the flow of life and walking upstream, which is harder, to see where you came from, which we don't really know unless we go and look for it. But then it actually turned into a physical journey as well, because just after I'd made the journey, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I needed to find a full medical history of myself, which I couldn't because I'd been abandoned as a baby in a convent. So I then went to look for my own origins, quite literally. I went to try and find my mother. And that was a much more difficult journey than having cancer or following a river. And so the book, if you like, is that there are 3 paths laid one on top of the other. And it came about organically. My original idea had just been to write a travelogue. But it's become, it's spilled over its boundaries and become The Fish Ladder, which has brought me here to Sri Lanka.
And how do you like the Fairway Gaul Literary Festival?
It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. Everyone has been so hospitable, so generous, so kind, and it's been really good fun. The people who come to the events they've read the book, they've bought the book, they know all about it, they have lots of questions to ask, everyone's engaged, and I'm having a really lovely time and I don't want to go back.
Next to me, I've got Sally Ann. How are you doing tonight?
I'm very well. Who wouldn't be in this wonderful setting with wonderful people like this?
Now, tell us about your experience with the Fairway Gaul Literary Festival this year.
Well, this is my first ever festival. Not my first time in Sri Lanka, of course, and in fact I grew up here as a girl until I was about 12, so it's a country I know well and love, so I was absolutely delighted to be able to come to be part of the festival.
And can you tell us a bit about your book?
Well, the book's called No Job for a Woman, which back in the day when I was growing up, going to university, getting a job, everything I wanted to do, they said that's no job for a woman. So that just turned out to be the title of the book. And then in Australia, I'm best known, I guess, for being the Lord Mayor of Brisbane, which is the largest local authority in Australia. And that's a while back, so I've done lots of other things since then.
Okay, so how's the feedback with your book at the Fairway Gold Literary Festival?
Well, I did a session, a chat session with Ashok, and of course he was a great interviewer, and we had a lot of fun. So I've had very good feedback on it, because I think people, I could talk about a time in Sri Lanka when it was Ceylon. I was a little girl at Independence, and I remember that very well. And I could talk about lots of things that most people, like you, for example, couldn't have possibly known because you're all so young.
I'm here with Carlos. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I'm so excited to be in Sri Lanka.
Is it your first time in Sri Lanka?
My first time in Sri Lanka, and hopefully not my last.
So tell us a bit about your book.
It's basically a raw, gritty memoir reflecting on what it means to be a man, what it means to try to be a good man. And it's called Man Up Reimagining Modern Manhood, and it tracks my journey of being this very sensitive kid, feeling like there was one way to be a man, and then kind of embodying all these really toxic stereotypes of masculinity, and then finding my way back to a more sort of tender, gentle, thoughtful, emotionally literate version of who I was, I think, meant to be. So it kind of tracks that journey in the book.
All right, and how has the feedback been at the Fairway Gold Literary Festival?
It's been amazing. I was so grateful. All 3 events I did were sold out and packed, and the reception was really warm and supportive. I just had my last show tonight, and I've done a lot of festivals all over the world, but this is definitely at the top of the list, and Sri Lanka is spectacular. So I've loved every minute I've had here.
And that's a wrap for tonight. We just finished the Authors Barbecue Dinner, where we got to meet, greet and dine with festival writers from the Fairway Gold Literary Festival 2018. That's it from me. My name's Kaylin Marcellus. Catch me again on High Events.